waking up in the medieval world, a morning unlike any other. You slowly open your eyes, feeling still hazy and heavy as if drifting between the boundary of dreams and reality. A faint light seeps through the gap of an old wooden door, casting a glow on the rough stone floor. The room before you is nothing like what you once knew. No soft bed, no thick cotton blanket, nor the fragrant scent of 21st century coffee. This is an entirely different world. You lie on a hard straw bed, each straw poking your skin like a crude reminder of the harsh life that awaits. The stone walls are rough, unplastered, covered in dust and cracks formed by time and harsh weather. Dim light filters in through the gaps of the worn wooden door, creating strange, flickering shadows like ghosts wandering the room. The air is thick and heavy with the lingering smell of burning wood smoke from a fireplace not fully extinguished overnight. Alongside it is the acrid scent of nearby livestock, cattle, donkeys, or horses, making the room strangely cold yet warm at the same time. You distinctly feel the difference between your modern life and this medieval world where everything is crude, simple, and full of challenges. You try to sit up. Your feet touch the cold floor, each icy chill sinking deep into your flesh, making you shiver. Suddenly, a noise comes from outside the door, hurried footsteps and urgent whispers. Someone is approaching, but why such haste in the dim morning light? A sense of unease rises in your chest, causing your heart to beat faster. You quickly stand up, eyes scanning the room for something to defend yourself with, a wooden stick or an old small knife. But all there is are a few crude tools used for rural life. A millstone, a piece of cloth, a small jar of water. Nothing enough to protect you from dangers outside. The footsteps grow nearer, then stop at the door. A low, hoarse voice calls out, "Open the door, quickly, something bad is happening." Nervously, you jerk the wooden door open and see a man with a tired face, red-rimmed eyes, wearing ragged clothes, standing outside in a fine drizzle. He is panting, his expression full of fear and confusion. "What is it?" you ask, but your voice catches in your throat from worry and surprise. They say, "There are bandits invading the village. They attack farms outside, burning houses and capturing people to enslave. If we don't prepare quickly, we will be the next victims," the man replies, his eyes glimmering with anxiety. Outside, the wind howls through the ancient forests, mingling with the distant hoot of an owl, creating a gloomy, dark atmosphere as if signaling the approaching sorrows. You quickly realize that, though you have just awakened in this crude room, there is no time to relax. Life here allows no hesitation or leisure. Every moment is a battle for survival. You begin to prepare, picking up a few items that might be useful, hurriedly putting on rough clothes, barefoot stepping outside. The biting cold of the early medieval morning cuts into your skin, but your heart is colder still due to the uncertainty and lurking dangers. Stepping into the front yard, the scene leaves you stunned. Several neighbors gather, their faces stained with dirt, sweat, and fear. They whisper about recent robberies. Some carry crude weapons, ready to defend the village. You sense a spreading, underlying chaos. Yet, at the same time, there is a profound mystery lingering in the air. Not only the bandits outside, but perhaps other forces hidden in the shadows, watching your every step. Someone in the village is betraying, or a more dangerous conspiracy is being woven. You hear the whisper of a nearby child. Someone saw dark shadows lurking at the forest edge. Not robbers, but things people dare not speak of. A chilling feeling spreads through your body. It is not just a simple enemy attack, but mysteries and enchantments intertwined in this world. A medieval world is not only harsh days of toil, but also a labyrinth full of secrets, dangers, and silent conspiracies waiting to erupt. Amid all the chaos and uncertainty, you suddenly realize one thing. You are not a stranger in this world. Something about this room, the smell of wood smoke and rough earth, gives you a familiar feeling, though your memory is vague and unclear. You decide not only to survive today, but to uncover the secrets behind the dense curtain of time. Who is the true enemy? Why are you here in an era where everything is so crude and harsh? And can you change your fate and that of this village before the storm comes? The sunlight begins to break through, casting weak rays through gray-black clouds, as if wanting to kindle hope in a dark world. You take a deep breath, feeling each breath of the air heavy with the smell of earth, grass, smoke, and livestock. then step forward, preparing for a long day full of challenges, mysteries, and surprises. The hard life of farmers in a new day, racing against time and darkness. While your heart still races from hurried warnings about bandits and mysterious shadows in the forest, the sky at the horizon has begun to brighten. The faint dawn is a sweet invitation, but also an uncompromising reminder that a new day in the medieval world has begun. You follow the villagers, treading heavily on the muddy dirt road after last night's rain. Each step marks the difficult rhythm of life waiting ahead. Here, life is not for the weak. You hear the clatter of a plow pulled by tired oxen, the sound of sickles cutting ripe grain onto the earth, the cries of children wailing from cold and hunger. These are the sounds of a world in constant motion, endlessly demanding devoted sacrifice from the farmers. You see old Maria, the weakest woman in the village, struggling with a bamboo basket full of vegetables under the dim light. She doesn't say much, her eyes always soaked with wrinkles and the hardship of decades of weary plowing, but today there is something different in her gaze. A deep worry, as if foreseeing something about to happen. You step closer and ask, but the old woman only shakes her head, then lowers her face to the ground. "We don't have much time left," she says softly, as if afraid someone might hear. Meanwhile, the morning light begins to reveal dry, cracked patches on the vast field. The farmers have started the first tasks of the day: plowing, sowing, watering. You wonder how they can maintain such perseverance when every day is a battle against the harshness of nature. But then, amid the bustling activity, a sudden scream echoes from the edge of the forest, a piercing shout making the morning air unusually tense. Everyone turns to look in that direction, faces turning pale. A young man with a pale face, running as if fleeing from something invisible, rushes into the village. They have come! Not only robbers, but strange shadows in the forest. The cursed assassins! The villagers stop all work, standing silently and fearfully. Whispers begin to spread like a cold wind. Eerie stories, vague figures once seen deep in the forest, things long forgotten or pushed aside from reality. You feel your heart pounding harder, not just from fear, but from an irresistible curiosity. There is something you must uncover, the truth behind those mysteries and shadows. But first, you must survive today, through hard work and lurking dangers. The villagers return to their tasks, though anxiety lingers in their hearts. You also rush to work with them, grabbing the heavy plow, dragging it across the dry land. Sweat begins to bead on your forehead, your limbs quickly aching. The sky grows hotter, but no one dares to complain, because everyone understands that if do not work now, the crops might be lost and famine will come. While working, you notice a small child lingering near the forest edge, its eyes strange, both curious and scared. Suddenly it turns to look at you, then whispers, "Don't believe everything people say about the darkness. It's not just ordinary darkness." You want to ask more, but the boy disappears as quickly as a passing breeze. It feels as if an invisible force is manipulating everything, a power you cannot yet comprehend. Returning to the village after the first day's work, you see the fire on a dry haystack suddenly flare fiercely. Everyone screams and scatters. You rush to put out the fire, but as you extinguish the flames, your eyes catch a shadow lurking behind the bushes. A stranger? Or is that darkness itself awakening dark forces? You clench your fists, feeling that everything is no longer just a story of survival. Behind the harshness of nature and the struggles of life is another battle, between light and darkness, truth and legend, life and death. A new day in the medieval world is not simply the start of work, but a journey full of danger, surprises, and mysteries, requiring you to be not only physically strong, but also mentally resilient. You wonder, can you uncover the truth and protect your loved ones from the lurking darkness? Or will you become part of those dark mysteries, forever lost in the mist of time? A bell ringing from the village tower cut through the atmosphere, reminding everyone that time was endlessly passing, and the challenges of the new day were not yet over. The new day had just dawned, the cold air gradually giving way to the faint light of dawn, but in your mind, unease had not yet subsided. Amid the unclear dangers lurking in the dark forest, another reality, invisible yet equally heavy, always weighed on the lives of the farmers here, the close and binding relationship between humans and nature, and between humans and the harsh, feudal society. You stand in the vast fields where the land is not only a source of life, but also the most precious asset, yet at the same time a shackle that cannot be removed from the neck of the farmer. That land belongs to the feudal lord, the one who holds life and death, the one who decides the fate of everyone in the village. You see Mr. Thomas, a thin middle-aged man with calloused hands from decades of farming. He lowers his head, pulls out a patch of weeds, then sighs. "This year's harvest doesn't look favorable," he says worriedly. "If it doesn't rain enough, the rice will die. If it rains too much, the land will flood." Rain, wind, drought, frost, all forces beyond the farmer's control, only accepted and adapted to. Nature itself is an invisible lord, with life and death power equal to the feudal lord. Each harvest season is a deadly gamble. Those who win live, those who lose may starve or lose their lives. While Mr. Thomas and other farmers struggle with the land and weather, you cannot help but recall warnings about the darkness beyond the forest, forces that bring not only physical danger but also spiritual obsession. People say the old forest is not only a refuge for wild beasts, but also a hiding place for vengeful spirits, ghosts sealed by ancient curses. You quietly think that perhaps this connection with nature is also the origin of countless mysteries, old stories passed down orally in the village. Each harvest is not only a battle with nature, but also a battle with the darkness of the past, with supernatural forces no one can explain. But it is not only nature. Feudal society is also a chain of harsh bindings. Farmers cannot freely own land. They must work as tenants, pay heavy taxes to the lord in exchange for protection from outside threats. You recall the heavy eyes of the village elders when mentioning Lord Edmund, a powerful lord, but equally ruthless. It is said he often sent guards to inspect the village, collect taxes, and punish those who refused to pay with severe penalties. Anyone who dared oppose would lose land, life, or disappear without a trace. A suffocating feeling rises inside you, imagining being trapped in a society where power lies in the hands of the merciless, and the fate of the small people is just pawns on the chessboard. You clearly feel the gap between rich and poor, harsh injustice, and invisible pressure weighing on every breath of everyone. Day after day, farmers must wake at dawn, face vast, unpredictable fields, and suffocating strict social rules. You recall the scene of old Mrs. Maria the other day, her worried eyes suddenly clearer knowing she was experienced, having witnessed many tragedies and schemes of the noble class. She told you a little-known story. Long ago, one night when the moon hid behind dark clouds, a group of strangers quietly passed through the village. They were neither the Lord's soldiers nor commoners. It is rumored they belonged to a mysterious cult, worshipping dark forces, and they left a haunting mark deep in the forest. Since then, our village has never known peace. You stand still, sensing the strange connection between the darkness in the forest and the oppressions from the human world. It seems that all dangers do not only come from outside, but also from within the feudal society filled with intrigues and schemes. Suddenly, a scream rings out from the village corner, breaking the rare silence. You run over and see a pale-faced boy standing, pointing at a displaced stone wall. "What happened?" you ask, and the boy whispers, "Here." Something moves at night. A few days ago, my mother heard whispers in the dark, strange footsteps, but when she ran out, there was no one. A chill runs down your spine. The village's mysteries are not just stories passed by word of mouth, but seem to be present, right before your eyes. You begin to realize that the life of peasants in the medieval world is not only physical hardship at dawn, but also a fragile balance between nature and feudal society, between reality and legend, between life and silent ghosts. In the eyes of the villagers, dependence on the Lord is a shackle, but also the only shield protecting them from dangers outside. But is that protection truly safe? Or does the Lord's power also carry dark seeds waiting to erupt? You decide that you cannot just stand by and wait. If you want to survive, want to change your fate, you must learn more about this connection. Uncover the secrets buried deep under the dry earth beneath the thick fog of time. As evening falls, you hear the village drum sounding, signaling an urgent meeting at the church. People gather with anxious faces and whispered talks about plans to protect the village from mysterious forces and bandits. Some discuss sending someone to notify the Lord, while others propose organizing their own defense force. You stand quietly on the sidelines, observing each worried and determined face. Harsh nature, unjust feudal society, and the dark forest threaten every moment. Amid that whirlpool, you see yourself facing an important crossroads. Accept fate or stand up and fight. The gloomy sky gradually covers the village as if wanting to drown everything in darkness. But in that darkness, you feel a glimmer of hope, a fierce desire to live from resilient people, small but unwilling to submit. You take a deep breath, ready to face the fierce challenges of nature and feudal society, and the dark mysteries yet to be revealed. Peasant life in the medieval world is not simply about survival, but is a story of courage, persistence, and the long battle against darkness, both outside and within. The Norman conquest and the underground wave of power change Hainschmeck. Amid the long, dark nights and the hard days in the fields, the darkness is not only in the deep forest or in the hearts of the people, but also spreads to the court. The story of the binding relationship between peasants, nature, and feudal society becomes even more complicated as a tidal wave of power slowly rises, ready to sweep away everything once familiar. The year 1066, a fateful year not only for the country, but also for every grain of dust on the fields of the villages. This is the year the Normans, led by William the Conqueror, a determined, ambitious, and cunning lord, launched the conquest of England with an iron will, completely changing the traditional power structure that had existed for ages. You, a small peasant just getting used to worries about nature and local lords, suddenly notice a silent change in the air. News of strange armies advancing from the north with fluttering flags and the crisp sound of horse hooves spreads like wildfire through the dry fields. The presence of the Normans was not just a matter of war, but also a warning of profound transformation in the social system, where power was no longer something negotiable or compromisable, but something to be seized by blood and steel. You hear the urgent drums in the villages, signaling summons and preparations for war. Your village, once small and quiet, suddenly becomes an important link on the new power map. William the Conqueror was not only a brilliant strategist, but also a master at building symbols of power. Strong castles, magnificent fortresses were erected as solid, steadfast outposts across the country, from high hills to deep valleys. You hear tales about a newly built castle near your area, a massive construction with thick stone walls and towering watchtowers. Thick iron doors and rows of guards equipped with gleaming swords and spears are the clearest reminders that the new power holds and controls every inch of this land. But not only was there an outward display of power, there were also sinister plots unfolding behind the castle's great hall doors. You hear stories of dark nights where powerful figures gathered to discuss how to maintain their positions, eliminate enemies, and control the villagers. One night, when the moon was hidden behind dark clouds, you witnessed a shadow moving stealthily near the deep forest. The person carried a secret letter, an invitation to a meeting among rebels who wanted to resist Norman rule. The drama of that night was not only in that dangerous meeting, but also in how you, a person used to a simple life, suddenly got caught in a complex web of conspiracies, where survival depended not only on land or weather, but also on the wisdom and courage of each individual. In the following days, you witnessed many villagers being arrested for rebellion, and small families had their lands confiscated, forced to abandon the ancestral land. Cries and pleas, mingled with the whip cracks in the cold, dark rooms of the castle, formed a tragic symphony you could never forget. But in the darkness of power, rays of hope began to emerge. A group of villagers, including the old and young, men and women, quietly organized secret meetings in makeshift houses or under dense tree canopies. They discussed ways to resist oppression, regain freedom, and preserve their traditions and culture. You were invited to join this group, those who were gradually becoming a flame of hope in a harsh world. Stories of small ambushes, secret night patrols, and early warning signs for the villagers were told like living legends, making your heart race. One night, while patrolling around the forest, you heard strange whispers, sounds not belonging to humans. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, creating eerie shapes. Suddenly, a shadow rushed past, leaving behind a mysterious object, an ancient charm carved with strange characters. The charm was said to hold protective power, or it could be a curse depending on the interpretation. You felt you had just touched a deep part of history, an undisclosed mystery of this land. Between the Norman struggle for power and the villagers' fight for survival, supernatural forces and ancient mysteries silently operated, making everything even more complex and unpredictable. The sturdy castles were not only symbols of material control, but also strongholds that the shadows could not easily penetrate. Yet within those cold walls, the darkest conspiracies were being woven. You stood between two worlds, the world of the humble peasants, where nature and feudal society were tightly bound, and the new world of the Normans, where power and violence reigned. You understood that just a small mistake could cost you and your loved ones everything. Day by day, storms of power and mysterious plots continued to swirl, driving the unstoppable changes of history. You knew that no matter what, life in the medieval world could never return to what it was before, and you had to prepare to face the future, an uncertain future, full of risks but also holding chances to change fate. You decided not to be just an observer, but to become part of the story, part of the fight for freedom, the struggle to preserve the soul of the land and its people. At the next blazing red dawn, when the Norman flags flew over the castle, you stood alongside your companions, your heart filled with determination. The Norman conquest was not just a change of power, but also a reminder that even in the darkest shadows, the light of courage and hope could shine brightest. After the violent upheavals of the Norman conquest, your village entered a period no one could have foreseen, a terrible disaster, darker than any nightmare. The plague, also known as the Black Death. You still remembered that day clearly. The sky was gloomy, cold winds blew across cracked fields, the scent of death slowly crept into every corner of the village. The first sick appeared unexpectedly. Simply, a thin man in the village suddenly collapsed, his skin turning purple-black, buboes swelling on his neck and underarms. The cries of pain echoed, making the air thick and full of horror. Within days, the strange disease spread like wildfire, claiming the lives of hundreds. The once peaceful village turned into a scene of mourning, corpses scattered on dirt roads, desperate cries echoing in the wind. You stood there helplessly watching familiar faces leave one by one, their eyes wide open but no longer seeing light. Darkness did not only cover the deep forests or castle walls, but seeped into every breath and every heart of the people. The plague was not just a disease, but a nameless nightmare, a cruel curse passed down among the people as a punishment from the heavens. Terrifying stories of demons and headless shadows wandering the village began to spread, multiplying the fear. While the feudal society was already shaken by the Norman power shift, the plague was like a double storm, breaking all traditional structures. Lords faced losing most of their soldiers and peasants, the main workforce and the base of their power. You witnessed chaotic scenes, abandoned fields because no one had the strength to work, empty granaries as crops failed, great castles on alert, guards thinning and growing weary. One afternoon, you heard a horrifying scream from a nearby castle. A high-ranking officer had just died of the plague. News spread quickly, like wildfire. No one was safe, not even the nobility. In panic and despair, people began turning to superstition and worship of mysterious forces. Rumors spread that the plague was a punishment from the gods or the mischief of ancient spirits living deep in the forest. Witches and sorcerers were suspected, hunted, and killed in dark nights. You see people who were once friends and relatives suddenly become enemies as the suspicion and fear turn them into strangers. Social relationships are torn apart, families break up, trust erodes. One night, while you check the situation at a house near the forest, you unexpectedly discover a strange sign. Unclear footprints of unknown people leading deep into the forest, then disappearing into the darkness. Nearby, a small demon-shaped talisman is left on the ground, carved with ancient characters you've never seen before. You wonder if the supernatural forces people talk about are really manipulating the plague, or if there are dark conspiracies behind it that the naked eye cannot see. Not only the people, but also the Lord must face helplessness. The officials in the old castle begin to fight for power amid the chaos. Many plot to use the plague as a tool to eliminate opponents or strengthen their position. You hear stories about mysterious assassinations in the castle, grand feasts suddenly turning into terrifying takeovers. Everyone has their own scheme, and the plague is the blazing wind that makes everything burn more fiercely than ever. Meanwhile, poor people like you are trapped in the destructive storm, facing death daily, hunger, and profound loneliness. Many flee the village, running into the deep forest or to big cities hoping to survive, but countless never return. One day, when you visit the survivors in the village, you see a 10-year-old girl, skinny, standing amid the ashes of a burned house. Her eyes hold endless sadness and loss, but also flicker a strange hope. "Are you the only one left in your family?" you ask. She nods, then whispers, "I heard people talk about a place called the Valley of Light, a place without darkness and disease. I want to go there." You look at her, your heart sinking from despair, but you also feel the fierce life burning quietly inside her, a symbol of survival amid the deadly flames. The days of the plague are like a sharp knife cutting deep into every soul, every life. But it is also there that resilience, compassion, and hope stubbornly live on. You decide that no matter how much the plague devastates, you will not let the darkness swallow everything. You begin a journey of discovery, not only about the disease, but also about the mysteries in the deep forest, ancient forces, and hidden truths. Because in a world full of pain and death, only knowledge, courage, and perseverance are the strongest weapons to fight against darkness, both outside and within the human soul. And then, when the first dawn after the long night of mourning breaks, you stand on the ruins of the past, looking toward the future, where, no matter what, light will always find a way through the thickest darkness. After the devastating storm of the plague, the Black Death, the small village where you live is no longer the same. Piles of corpses, abandoned fields, and the once imposing castle gradually lose their former grandeur. But right in that darkness, a new flame begins to ignite. The flame of a new class, wealthy and ambitious merchants, quietly but decisively threatening the long-standing position of the feudal nobility. You, a witness to many ups and downs, begin to notice changes in the air, not just instability caused by nature, disease, or violent power, but also the unexpected transformation of society. From luxurious and bustling cities, caravans of merchants, silk traders, salt, spices, and precious metals dealers increasingly appear, bringing new wealth and power. On a cold, drizzling afternoon, as you wander along the dusty road leading into the nearby town, you are drawn by an unusual scene. Tall houses, shops displaying exquisite goods, and people dressed in shiny silk garments chatting lively with each other. The scent of spices and strange fragrances mingles with laughter and voices, creating an atmosphere completely different from the barren fields and cold stone castles you once knew. While the nobility still holds firm in their strong castles, this new merchant class builds power from trade routes, business contracts, and their economic strength. You are introduced to a man named Jeffrey, a young, agile, and ambitious merchant. Jeffrey is not only skilled in business, but also sharp-minded with a wide network of connections. He tells you, the world is changing. Power is no longer just swords and castles. Those with money and trade networks are the ones in control. But the rise of the merchant class is far from smooth. It is an underground war full of intrigue, hatred, and thrilling battles of wit with the feudal nobility who still hold sway. You witness fiery confrontations in closed meetings where power is negotiated with both money and threats. One night, when you are invited to a secret party at Jeffrey's house, the atmosphere grows tense as a group of nobles suddenly appear, bringing veiled warnings and hostile looks. What seemed like friendly conversation quickly turns into a dramatic argument. An elderly noble with a stern face stands up and says in a cold tone, "You may be rich, but do not forget who built this world. Feudalism is the root of power and no one can replace it." Jeffrey replies with a cold smile. "The old roots may be uprooted to make way for new, healthier trees. The era has changed, and we are the future." The air seems to boil. You feel the danger lurking. This is not just a debate about power, but a survival battle between two forces vying step by step. Yet beyond official confrontations, there are silent shadows lurking. You accidentally discover shocking secrets, assassinations with unknown perpetrators, mysterious messages sent through trade routes, and schemes hidden within lavish parties. One day, as you follow a suspect in a dark alley of the city, you witness a person being poisoned in the middle of a crowd without anyone noticing. This person is a noble supporting the merchant class. This sudden death stirs new suspicions and tensions among the factions. You begin to realize that no one can be fully trusted, not even those friends you thought closest. Everyone can be an enemy or an ally, depending on their own interests. And you, a person from a peasant background, are drawn into this complex network, having to learn to protect yourself and seek the truth. Meanwhile, legends of ghosts and witches still smolder in the city. Strange cases happen at night, mysterious flames appear in the forest, and rumors about a supernatural force manipulating everything unsettle you. One night, while wandering and lost in thought, you hear whispers in the wind, ancient prayers echoing from an abandoned temple. Your steps seem drawn into the darkness, and before your eyes appears an old wooden box carved with mysterious characters. You do not know if this is a sign of salvation or a coming curse. Time passed. The struggle between the merchant class and the nobility grew increasingly fierce, leading to rebellions, covert wars, and bloody betrayals. The peasants, you and those close to you, despite enduring much suffering, began to realize the power within themselves. You saw many in the village, no longer willing to accept the fate of slavery under the feudal lord, starting to migrate to the city, learning trading skills and integrating into the new merchant class. Doors open to new opportunities and hopes, but also full of unforeseen dangers. Amidst this chaos and transformation, you sensed a new horizon opening, where power was no longer held solely by one group, but shared and contested by many forces. You stood at a choice: to continue clinging to a past filled with pain and oppression, or to step into a future uncertain but full of promise, daring to face challenges and seek the path to true freedom. As the dawn of a new era rose on the horizon, your heart swelled with excitement and determination. Medieval life with its dark shadows was never easy, but it never lacked rays of hope and vibrant vitality. After the devastating waves of the plague, the conquests, and the struggles between feudal and merchant forces, the life of you and the villagers continued. But amid the tragic picture, cultural and spiritual moments were like warm flames, helping you and everyone keep faith, build community bonds, and hold on to the faintest hopes. One autumn afternoon, as the weak late sunlight poured golden on the old thatched roofs, you saw the villagers gather in the village square, an open space among the simple earthen houses. Laughter and voices, singing echoed among playing children. Lute music played gentle melodies of familiar folk songs. It was a moment when the people, despite difficulties and lingering fears, came together to share, to feel the warmth of kinship and tradition. Traditional festivals, though simple and crude, were invisible threads connecting everyone with each other and their ancestors. You recalled the story that old Maria once told about the autumn festival, when the whole village offered simple gifts, golden ears of rice, baked cakes, along with music and dances around the large fire. It was not only a ritual to pray for the harvest, but also a time for people to forget their pains, to celebrate, and to strengthen solidarity. One night, under a full moon shining in a clear sky, you were invited to a storytelling night at Samuel's house, the village's keeper of the storytelling tradition. He sat by the fire, eyes shining, telling ancient myths about brave knights, mysterious dragons, and magical miracles. Those stories were not only entertainment, but also deep spiritual lessons. They taught courage, loyalty, and the power of faith amid harsh trials. In that mystical atmosphere, you felt a deep connection between past and present, between humans and nature, between people and enduring spiritual values. However, within those legendary tales lay unexplained mysteries. It was rumored that deep in the forest, ancient spirits watched, that some curses and magic still affected daily life. A few villagers had mysteriously disappeared, and strange, dark shadows appeared on full moon nights. You once experienced a night when, while passing through the forest, a strange blue light emanated from a crack in the rocks, accompanied by a distant singing like that of a fairy tale maiden. The enchanting song was so captivating that you almost forgot the lurking fear from the darkness. But as you drew closer, the light suddenly went out, leaving an eerie silence and faint footprints on the ground. These experiences made you realize that the life of people in the Middle Ages was not only about material existence and survival, but also a life rich in spirituality, with mysterious things always present nearby, whether people wanted them or not. During festivals, besides music and dancing, people also organized folk games, archery contests, and wrestling matches to train their health and spirit. You remember once participating in an archery contest. Though your hands trembled with nervousness, your heart was full of determination, because victory was not only a personal pride, but also an affirmation of the community's strength. The story of a blacksmith in the village, a close friend of yours, is also evidence of the skill and resilience of the people. He not only forged sharp swords for the castle guards, but also crafted small items for daily life, always holding the belief that no matter how difficult the circumstances, people could create miracles with their own hands. But not all moments were peaceful. There were festival nights interrupted by the screams of villagers when shadows stealthily attacked the village or when rumors about witches and demons spread. Many villagers were suspected and arrested, causing division and loss of trust. You witnessed a heartbreaking scene when an elderly woman, falsely accused of being a witch, was led into the village square under blazing torches. But at the last moment, an unexpected rainstorm arrived, extinguishing the fire and easing the tension, leaving unanswered questions about justice and faith in the divine. In that spiritual life, folk music played an important role as a healing balm for the soul's wounds. Traditional melodies rose from the lute, flute, and drum, sweet and profound tunes that made people forget pain, find peace, and simple joy. You still remember one night when you and others sang loudly the song The Journey of Light, an ancient song telling the story of the journey through darkness to find life and freedom. The sound echoed in the vast space like a promise that no matter what, light would always conquer darkness. Family was also a rare place of peace in a hard life. You saw children gathered around the fire, listening to grandparents telling stories, learning early lessons about morality and compassion. The warmth of family helped everyone overcome life's storms, serving as the strongest spiritual support. However, you also felt the silent pains in each person's heart, losses from disease, separations from war, unfulfilled dreams. But within those dreams, the desires for a better life still quietly burned, urging people to keep fighting and hoping. Once, while passing a quiet village road, you saw a group silently lighting candles and praying beside an old wooden cross. They prayed for peace, protection from lurking dangers, and the survival of their families. That was the most profound image of the people's strong belief in spiritual power, which would never be defeated in any circumstance. Those cultural and spiritual moments not only helped people preserve tradition, but also served as a spiritual foundation, an invisible strength against the destruction of nature, disease, war, and social oppression. You, once an outsider in the past, have now become an inseparable part of the community, a witness and storyteller of the brave, resilient people amid the turbulent and mysterious medieval world. As the last light of day sets behind distant hills, you stand there, hearing laughter, singing, and music echoing in the wind, feeling the vibrant life still flowing in every breath of the village, a symbol of hope, humanity, and the spiritual strength rising above all adversity. When the darkness of accumulating calamities, devastating plague, the shaky power of feudal lords, the rise of the merchant class gradually enveloped every corner of life, the church stood firm as a solid anchor, an indispensable spiritual center in the souls and society of medieval people. But the role of the church did not stop there. Within those cold stone walls and towering vaults lay secrets, power intrigues, and profound mysteries. You, who have experienced countless ups and downs in life, now find yourself frequently returning to the village church, which is both a place of peace and the center of a sophisticated power system. The church was not simply a place of worship, but the heart of the village, where people came to seek protection, forgiveness, and hope amid unpredictable trials. Festive ceremonies and the ringing bells echoing throughout the valley reminded everyone that within the thick darkness, there was still guiding light. However, you also knew that behind those cold stone walls, the clergy held enormous power. They were not only spreaders of faith, but also keepers of knowledge, secret libraries housing ancient manuscripts, scriptures, and knowledge of astronomy, medicine, and philosophy passed down from antiquity. Once, during a rare trip to the nearby city, when you were led into a monastery, you were astonished by thousands of books neatly arranged on wooden shelves reaching to the ceiling. Elaborate illustrations, handwritten parchment scrolls, and dark ink, all like priceless treasures waiting to be discovered. But this place was also where fierce debates over knowledge and faith took place, between those wanting to preserve traditional doctrines and thinkers who sought reform and renewal. You heard stories about a young monk named Edmund who dared challenge old views, was banned and closely watched like a ghost roaming dark, long corridors. Not only a cultural center, the church was also a powerful political organization. Monks and bishops ranked among the upper echelons of society, able to influence decisions of lords and royalty. You recalled hearing mysterious tales about secret meetings in the chapel, where the future of entire lands was decided by prayers intertwined with political schemes. One night, when you happened to stay at the monastery due to a heavy storm, you heard secret whispers from inside the great hall. A group of old monks was discussing a conspiracy to overthrow a lord, losing favor with his people. You stood still, heart pounding, afraid to enter but unable to leave. Those whispers gradually turned into threats, promises of power and revenge. You realized that within that sacred church also existed schemes no less ruthless than the outside world. Yet, the church's mysteries extended even further. It was rumored that deep underground in the monastery's chambers, ancient secrets were hidden, magical artifacts, forbidden scriptures, and ancient curses. Once, while exploring the monastery's dark corridors, you accidentally opened a small door leading down to a dusty cellar. Moss-covered stone walls bore strange symbols, and in the center, a stone table held old manuscripts waiting for someone to read them. You felt a cold breath pass by, as if an invisible force was watching your every step. The secrets there could change the course of history or bring unforeseen disasters. Besides, the church played an important role in education and helping the poor. Monasteries organized the first classes for children and adults, teaching reading, writing, and skills necessary to survive in a challenging era. You had met curious children sitting around monks, attentively learning every letter and prayer. Monasteries were also places of healing, with herbal medicines and traditional medical methods passed down through generations. You knew that many times, thanks to the help of monastery physicians, those afflicted by plague or serious injuries were saved. But what intrigues you the most is the connection between the church and the supernatural forces you have heard many stories about. It is rumored that the church may be the place that holds the balance between light and darkness, between life and death, between the obvious and the mysterious. One stormy night, as you gaze up at the star-filled sky, a strange light suddenly streaks across overhead. You recall the words of an old monk who once said, "Light will guide those souls who persevere, but darkness never yields easily." You feel as if you are caught in a swirling mystery of power, faith, and knowledge, where every decision, every step can lead to radiant light or deep darkness. Day after day, the church remains a gathering place, where people turn in their moments of deepest despair, yet at the same time it is an arena of hidden power, with plots, betrayals, and mystical miracles. You stand between two worlds, the world of brave, resilient people of faith, and the world of ruthless schemes, dark secrets few dare to touch. And you know that your journey, the journey of medieval people, is still long, full of surprises, dangers, but also not without sparks of hope and spiritual strength to overcome every trial. Sacred architecture and creative symbolism, a maze of faith and mystery. In the turbulent medieval world, when people's lives revolved around fear, belief, and power, great architectural works like grand churches became sacred symbols and unshakable spirits. The soaring vaulted ceilings, the vibrant stained glass windows, and the complex labyrinths inside are not only places of worship, but also hold a mysterious world and profound art reflecting humanity's aspiration toward the sacred. After many experiences with rural life, the rise of new power, and the mysteries within the church, you now have the chance to set foot inside one of the most famous large churches in the region, a colossal structure once regarded as a wonder of the medieval world. From the moment you step through the intricately carved wooden door, you are overwhelmed by the vast space and the deep echoes of bells and sacred chants blending with colorful light streaming through the stained glass. Each beam of light filters through the glass panels, painting vivid images on the cold stone floors of saints, mythological stories, and religious symbols. But what amazes you most is the maze of corridors, small chambers, and hidden passages within the church that hold secrets known only to the trusted few. You are guided through the dim corridors, shimmering light reflecting on granite walls carved with intricate patterns, mysterious motifs intertwined with ancient religious symbols. Each step draws you deeper into another world where art and spirituality merge, creating a vivid picture of limitless faith and creativity. As you move along, you come across a small old cracked door hidden beneath a staircase. The guide whispers, "This is the entrance to a secret chamber, where monks once held special rituals and preserved precious ancient manuscripts." A chill runs down your spine as the door creaks open, leading into a small room with faded murals still exuding solemnity, ancient symbols, and stone tables covered in the dust of time. In the center stands a small altar engraved with characters you cannot yet understand. You see a thick, leather-bound book with an elaborately decorated cover, its handwritten black ink faded by the years. When you touch the page, you suddenly hear whispers echoing from the past, the murmurs of souls who once safeguarded knowledge and faith in this world. Stepping out of the secret room, you see a corridor leading down to the deep basement, where architectural models, sketch drawings, and maps demonstrate how the construction of domes, stained glass windows, and a complex sound conduit system create remarkable auditory effects during ceremonies. You realize that church architecture is not only a human creation for worship, but also a technical marvel, where art and science intersect to produce a unique, to fate, profound spiritual experience. Yet alongside that magnificent beauty, many mysteries and legends surround the great churches. People recount stories of secrets hidden within stone walls, rooms concealing sacred relics, and strange signs appearing in the carved decorations. Once, you overheard rumors about a mysterious holy chamber, a room no one has been able to find, containing supernatural power and ancient curse capable of changing the fate of the entire land. Those who tried to explore it disappeared mysteriously, leaving behind only terrifying oral tales. One stormy night, as you wandered near the church, the light from a small window flickered irregularly. You decided to approach and saw a shadowy figure silently standing inside, gazing out at the rainy sky. That person, a cleric with deep eyes, turned to you and whispered enigmatically, "Not everything we see is real. In this architecture, between light and shadow, there are things beyond imagination." You suddenly realize the church is not only a physical structure, but also a spiritual labyrinth, where faith, creativity, and mystery are tightly interwoven. From the soaring domes to the moss-covered stone walls, every detail is designed to lead people through a spiritual journey, from the chaos of the outside world to the serenity and light of faith. You also discover secrets about the symbols depicted on the stained glass, profound metaphors for the battle between light and darkness, life and death, faith and doubt. But along with admiration, you cannot help feeling a faint chill. On many occasions, strange sounds, mysterious shadows, and doors opening and closing without reason make you realize that within those sacred walls, darkness has never completely vanished. You recall the cleric's words on that rainy night. In this architecture, there is not only stone and glass, but also the souls of hundreds of generations, dreams and fears. As dawn breaks, you stand in the churchyard, looking up at the curling domes seeming to reach the blue sky. You clearly see that this building is a symbol of immortal faith and the limitless creativity of humanity, despite living in a world full of challenges, fears, and turmoil. That sacred architecture is not only a place to honor faith, but also a testament to the power of the human spirit, Ansfi, the yearning to overcome all hardships and return to light and peace. You walk inside the church, listening to the echoes of the past and sensing the breath of time flowing through every stone, every stained glass panel, every intricately carved wall, where every mystery, every story, and every belief blend to create a world both mystical and wondrous. When the light of the great church shines through the soaring domes, it seems that holiness also covers the souls preparing to embark on a fierce journey, where honor and duty meet darkness and danger. This is the story of the Knights, warriors of the Great Crusade, the religious war to reclaim the Holy Land of Jerusalem, where all faith and power were tested to the utmost. You are not a knight, but your life, as an ordinary villager, cannot be separated from the distant echoes of that war and honor. As the knights' armies march loudly, the sound of war drums resounds, the clatter of horses blends with prayers flooding the churches, and you clearly feel that a new chapter of history is unfolding with many upheavals and tragedies. The knights, in shining armor, wielding swords and shields embossed with the cross, are the embodiment of absolute loyalty to their faith and Lord. But few know that beneath that armor lie conflicted souls, untold stories of fear, doubt, and dark secrets. You clearly remember a story passed down in the village about Sir Alaric, a young knight with eyes full of passion but also carrying silent pain. He left the village amid blessings and hopes of everyone, but returned years later a different man, physically and spiritually exhausted, bearing secrets no one dared to ask about. The journey of knights was not only glorious battles in the harsh deserts of the Middle East, but also long, drawn-out days of homesickness, the cruelty of war, and complex political intrigues. You have heard rumors that the Crusades were not merely religious wars, but power struggles among lords, where knightly honor was sometimes overshadowed by personal schemes and ruthless cruelty. One night, before the moon had risen, a strange man appeared in your village, his face scarred and eyes cold. He claimed to be a former knight who had participated in many crusade campaigns and now returned with a secret and dangerous message. He told of a dark conspiracy within the ranks of the knights, a small group called the Black Cross Shadows, plotting to manipulate the war for their own interests, even willing to betray their sacred ideals to gain ultimate power. Your heart races hearing about mysterious assassinations, secret candlelit meetings of cold-blooded knights, deaths disguised as accidents, or battlefield casualties. The truth gradually unfolds. War is not only swords clashing, but also a battle of minds, schemes, and betrayal. But not all knights were like that. You heard of Sir Elric, a just and compassionate knight who always put duty and honor above all else. He saved many villagers when the storms of war came and inspired many. However, the life of a knight was not only about fighting. It was also long days, patiently abiding by the strict rules of the order, solemn holy ceremonies, and inner struggles choosing between duty and personal feelings. You recall the story of a young knight, Sir Rowan, who gave up glory and fame to protect a commoner from the oppression of a feudal lord. His actions shocked the order and sparked a wave of change in ideas about duty and honor. Life on the battlefield was also full of tragedy and surprises. You once heard of a fierce battle in the burning lands of Jerusalem, where the sky blazed red like fire, screams and clashing steel echoed day and night. Many knights sacrificed themselves, leaving tales of pain and undying loyalty. But alongside heroic deeds were shadows no one wanted to mention. Brutality towards civilians, bloody power struggles among knight factions, and broken oaths in darkness. Your heart feels heavy hearing about women and children caught in the war, shattered lives, and dreams buried in the conflict. Yet amid the suffering, the spirit of knighthood remained a strong symbol of faith and sacrifice. They stood between life and death, between light and darkness, fighting not only for land, but for ideals and sacred faith. You understand that the life of a knight, whether glorified or criticized, is an indispensable part of the overall picture of medieval society, reflecting both the glorious light and the deep darkness of the era. One night, sitting by the fire, you reflect on the stories heard, the buried secrets, and the hopes that never extinguished. You wonder if you could become a storyteller, a keeper of memories, passing down lessons to the next generation about an age of honor, cunning, faith, and endless battles. And as the first dawn of a new day shines over the village fields, you stand there, hearing the church bells ring, feeling the vigorous life of a society constantly transforming, where despite pain, hope always remains. The emergence of new powers in the East, the Mongol whirlwind, and the reversal of power, while you are still immersed in stories of knights, crusades, and the struggles among feudal and merchant powers in Western Europe, an invisible but fierce whirlwind from the East sweeps away all boundaries, creating unimaginable upheavals on the medieval world's political map. The Mongol Empire, a name that alone makes people shudder, with extraordinary military strength and clever tactics, appeared and rapidly expanded its territory like a fierce fire burning across the Eurasian steppes. You hear news reaching your village through hurried merchants and envoys, telling of a fierce Mongol army with extraordinary cavalry, rushing like a storm through cities and villages, no one able to stand before their destructive force. But it was not only military strength that made the Mongol Empire different. Their warfare strategy and skillful control over new territories were remarkable. They conquered not only by force, but also built an efficient administrative system, wisely using fear and respect to consolidate power. One dark night, while sitting by the fire with the village elders, an envoy quietly appeared, carrying a long letter sealed with a falcon emblem, the symbol of the Mongol Empire. The envoy said little, just placed the letter down and left into the darkness. The letter contained cold warnings. Our rise is inevitable. Those who stand in our way will be crushed. But there are those who may choose to stand with us and receive power and protection. You look around, everyone's eyes are filled with sadness, mixed with fear and curiosity. The story of the Mongol armies was no longer distant, but directly threatening every home and piece of land in your village. From then on, the small village began showing strange signs. Hunters reported horses appearing without traces near the forest, strange footprints on stones and earth, and strange drum sounds coming from distant borders. You also hear tales of mysterious disappearances, people leaving home and never returning, leaving only rumors of shadows passing through the night and the roaring of a storm about to break. One afternoon, passing through the fields, you suddenly see a strange object half buried in the ground, a small flag with the Mongol falcon emblem, tattered and stained with red earth. You feel a chill run down your spine, as if their presence had touched your very soul. But the rise of the Mongols was not only a story of war and fear. Beneath these harsh layers, the empire brought profound changes in culture, economy, and trade. You learn that along with territorial expansion, ancient Silk roads were restored and flourished, creating a trade network connecting east and west, from dry deserts to the bustling cities of Europe. The merchant class in cities like the town near your village began to have opportunities to access new exotic luxury goods, fresh ideas from the East, which changed many lifestyles and ways of thinking. However, with the expanding power, the Mongol Empire also brought immeasurable consequences. Bloody battles, the destruction of cities, and massive migrations of people fleeing war, leaving many lands deserted and unstable. You heard tragic stories of an Eastern noble family forced to abandon their castle, carrying only a few precious belongings and fleeing westward in hopes of finding safety. Especially amidst wars and migrations, wandering groups appeared, bandits, sorcerers, and witches, shadowy figures in the dark, adding to the chaos and mystery of this era. You heard elders tell of a Mongol witch who was said to see the future and control storms, who saved your village from a flood with mysterious prayers. But there were also rumors that she took the souls of traitors and that her shadow still wandered the forest on full moon nights. Day by day, news of the relentless Mongol advance made everyone restless. Your village began organizing prayer sessions and festivals for peace, hoping the destruction would not reach this beloved land. You felt as if standing in the midst of a giant storm, an unstoppable force, while inside you had to keep faith, find ways to protect your family and community. However, within that whirlwind of power, some Mongols were not only warriors but also talented leaders who brought stability to conquered lands and knew how to integrate and respect local cultures, sometimes with firmness. You met a young Mongol merchant who said their empire was not only about war, but also about the aspiration to build a more connected and harmonious world, where people could exchange and learn from each other. His story made you rethink the nature of power and change. It was not only a war between kingdoms, but also a movement of ideas, culture, and knowledge. In the end, you realized that the medieval world, though challenged by mighty forces like the Mongol Empire, was a multidimensional picture where darkness and light, war and peace, destruction and creation intertwined and interacted. You stood at a historic crossroads, knowing that what happened in this era would shape the future for centuries, and you, though just an ordinary person, were a witness to this dramatic and wondrous transformation. As you gradually got used to the turbulent rhythm of medieval life, from the fierce battles of the Crusades to the stormy expansion of the Mongol Empire, stories of prominent historical figures also began to appear, like bright stars in a sky full of clouds and darkness. You heard about Charlemagne, the legendary king of the Franks, who expanded the largest empire in Europe since ancient Rome and laid the foundation for the medieval period. But behind that glory was a complex man, tormented by immense responsibilities, political schemes, and loneliness that no one understood. One story told by an old monk in a monastery near your village said that in his final years, Charlemagne was haunted by an ancient curse. A curse threatening not only his throne, but also his soul. He saw ghosts, heard mysterious whispers in the dark, which troubled his mind and made him often think of ultimate solitude. You also learned about William Marshall, the exemplary knight considered a symbol of loyalty and combat skill, but not everyone knew that he had endured harsh moments, having to choose between duty and personal feelings, between honor and survival. Once, in a fierce battle, William Marshall saved a young lord from death, even though he knew the act could endanger his own life. That action not only saved another, but also tested and affirmed his loyalty in the eyes of all. However, amidst the stories of power and honor, you also hear secrets few know about covert conspiracies, betrayals, and unexpected turning points no one foresaw. For example, there are rumors that Charlemagne was once betrayed by a trusted confidant, leading to major defeats on the battlefield. That person, a shadowy figure, placed personal interests above the empire, shaking the trust among allies. You have also heard tales of long nights when William Marshall faced the shadows within his mind, nightmares of lost loved ones and agonizing choices. The lives of these figures are not simple tales of victory or defeat, but a blend of many shades: love and hate, loyalty and betrayal, light and darkness. You imagine Charlemagne alone in the castle's gallery, looking out at the starry sky, feeling the heavy burden of kingship on his shoulders, while the whispers of past souls drift softly in the wind. Or the image of William Marshall, in shining armor but with sorrowful eyes, standing on a blood-soaked battlefield, confronting the truth that honor does not always bring happiness. You also hear of secret meetings between powerful figures, where the fate of kingdoms is decided not by swords but through cunning exchanges, promises, and lies. Once, at a dinner in the castle, Charlemagne faced a powerful bishop who did not hesitate to challenge the throne with sharp words, creating a tension so thick it felt suffocating. That debate was not just a battle of reason, but a subtle game of power. You realize that medieval society is a complex maze of ambitious and emotional people, where every decision can change not only one's fate, but that of an entire nation. Moreover, the stories about historical figures contain many legendary elements that stir your curiosity. Rumors say Charlemagne once possessed a mystical sword that could grant unbeatable strength, but also bound the wielder's soul with deep curses. You also hear of William Marshall, said to have received a saint's prayer, helping him overcome seemingly impossible battles. Yet, alongside miracles and legends, the reality of medieval life and war was a series of bloody, harsh, and uncertain days. You understand that no hero is perfect, and every person, king or knight, carries darkness, fears, and unavoidable mistakes within. And it is precisely these things that create the richness and depth of history, making each story a lesson about humanity and society. In the end, you wonder if you can pass on these stories truthfully and fully, so future generations understand not only the glory, but also the hidden shadows of the Middle Ages. You stand at the crossroads of history and the present, knowing every story has many dimensions, and every person is an inseparable part of the grand tapestry called medieval times. As you step through heavy stone gates into ancient castles and cathedrals that have stood for centuries, you enter not only magnificent architectural spaces, but also touch stories, secrets, and untold shadows of the Middle Ages, a turbulent, complex, and contradictory era. Castles, sturdy fortresses with thick stone walls, towering watchtowers, and deep moats, were once symbols of power, domination, and protection. You can feel the breath of history in every stone, every trace of time imprinted on the walls. But beneath that grandeur lie bloody stories, fierce battles, and dark conspiracies unfolding in the shadows of long, gloomy corridors. You have heard the village elders speak of sleepless nights when screams and clashing swords echoed from the castle, of silent massacres kept hidden. Once, you had the chance to explore an abandoned castle near the village. The rotten wooden door creaked as you opened it, revealing a dust-covered room with rusty weapons, old letters scattered on the floor, and faded murals depicting endless wars. Suddenly, you feel a cold breeze pass by, as if history is still alive and the ghosts of the past silently watch your steps. A small noise sounds behind you, making your heart race. Was it just a rat, or a sign of secrets yet to be revealed? Beside castles, ancient cathedrals also hold many mysteries and profound meanings. Their soaring arches and stained glass windows with shimmering light create a sacred, mystical space. You have heard stories about solemn holy ceremonies, hymns echoing through long hallways, and flickering candles beside ancient statues, as if preserving untold stories of hundreds of generations. But churches also harbor inexplicable secrets. It is rumored that beneath the great cathedrals are hidden tunnels, places storing treasures, ancient documents, and secrets that could shake the foundations of power at that time. One night, while tracking a mysterious figure near a cathedral, you accidentally discover a small passage leading down to a dark basement. Below, walls are carved with ancient characters, mysterious drawings forming an underground labyrinth. You feel the tension rising, each step echoing in the cold space. Tales of those who tried to explore that labyrinth and vanished without a trace send chills down your spine. Not only filled with mystery and danger, these structures also stand as vivid testimonies to the cultural, artistic, and intellectual development of the Middle Ages. The intricate carvings, artistic patterns on stone and wood, show humanity's endless creativity, despite living in a harsh era. You once witnessed an artisan restoring ancient reliefs, carefully attending to every detail with passion. Through that, you realize history is not only told in books, but lives in every stone and every arch. These buildings also mark many important events, where kings once sat on thrones, where knights once shouted oaths of loyalty, where ordinary people came to pray and seek comfort. However, not all was peaceful. Conflicts, assassinations, and conspiracies always lurked beneath the dust of time. You have heard rumors about headless night ghosts wandering the castles, about cries of women imprisoned in dark rooms, about mysterious disappearances linked to the deep secrets of noble families. You cannot help but wonder if you could ever uncover all these secrets, or remain a mere traveler moving between the shadows and light of the past. Standing in the castle courtyard or before the ancient church door, you feel a deep respect for these structures that are not only relics but also witnesses of history. They are links connecting past and present, helping you better understand the life, culture, and soul of those who lived through the Middle Ages. You realize that these stones carry not only the weight of matter, but also memories, beliefs, dreams, and wounds of a bygone era. Amidst the grandeur and silence, you feel as if standing before an untold story, the story of humanity, power, faith, and dark secrets that only time can reveal. You walk on, your heart full of emotion and curiosity, knowing that the journey into medieval history is not only a journey of intellect, but also of the soul, where every step leaves an indelible mark, the spirit of resilience, creativity, and hope of medieval people. Light overcoming darkness. When you stand among the solid stone walls of an ancient castle, hearing the church bells ringing in the quiet space, you sense not only the enormity of history, but also the resilience, creativity, and burning hope of medieval people, elements that overcame all trials and laid a strong foundation for future eras. The Middle Ages, though later called the Dark Ages, due to countless hardships, from wars and plagues to social oppression, was a time marked by extraordinary human endurance against adversity. You once heard the story of old Maria, who lived through many failed harvests and the plague that took many loved ones, yet she diligently tended her small garden daily, sowing and nurturing with faith that the crops would come, that life still held hope for brighter tomorrows. Creativity was also a prominent feature of this era. Despite scarcity and harsh conditions, people continuously sought ways to improve tools, agricultural techniques, architecture, and arts. You witnessed once, at a village fair, craftsmen demonstrating the skillful making of new windmills that reduced labor and increased efficiency. Intricately decorated pottery, durable leather shoes, and small boats designed to cross raging rivers, all symbols of unceasing creativity. Yet, it was hope that was the invisible force keeping communities alive through hard times. Facing devastating storms and famine, they still organized traditional festivals, church ceremonies, and storytelling nights by the fire, all to nourish the soul, maintain faith, and build bonds. You remember one full moon night when everyone gathered around the big fire to hear Samuel recount the story of a knight who overcame all trials to return home, bringing tales of courage and love. These stories were like little lights shining in the dark, strengthening faith and spirit in each person. However, life never lacked surprises and challenges. You endured a harsh winter when food ran out, blizzards raged, and disease spread. During that time, the resilient villagers found ways to survive through unity and compassion. You vividly recall how everyone shared bowls of porridge, helped the elderly, and cared for hungry, cold children. These small acts, though simple, became warm flames that kept the community from breaking apart. Creativity also showed in traditional healing methods, knowledge of precious herbs, and healthcare practices passed down through families and monasteries. You witnessed a monastery healer use secret remedies to save a young villager wounded in war, reviving belief's miracles. Moreover, resilience was shown through the courage of soldiers, knights, and ordinary people in religious wars and homeland defense. Facing death, they stood ready to fight for ideals and the future. You heard about a group of young warriors from your village who volunteered for the Crusades, carrying the fire of faith and desire for freedom, knowing dangers lurked ahead. But the Middle Ages was not only about war and suffering. It was also a time of knowledge exploration, with scientists, poets, and philosophers lighting the culture across centuries. Monastery libraries preserved and passed on ancient manuscripts, ensuring knowledge was not lost. You have heard about a young monk named Edmund, who dared to challenge ancient views and sought to bring new knowledge to the people, despite facing many threats and prohibitions. It was this combination of faith, creativity, and resilience that helped the Middle Ages not become the Dark Ages, as many mistakenly believe, but rather an important period that laid the foundation for more glorious eras to come. You stand among ancient architectural works, clearly seeing traces of time and untold stories of people who lived, loved, and fought to hold on to their faith and life. You understand that, despite all the pain and challenges, humanity always finds light in the darkness, constantly creates to overcome limits, and always hopes for a brighter future. And the story of resilience, creativity, and hope from the Middle Ages will continue to echo through generations, serving as an endless source of inspiration for humanity today and tomorrow. You stand in a historic space, inside the stone walls of a castle and the grand arches of a cathedral that have existed for hundreds of years, immersed in stories of history, stories of war, faith, hope, and timeless trials. But above all, you are invited to reflect that the past is not something distant, but the very flesh and blood, the foundation, the soul of your present and future life. One night, as the sky drizzled rain, you sat by the fire with the village elders, listening to them recount the upheavals, the people who passed through, and the events that shaped their lives and those of future generations. But it was not only old tales, but also a profound message that all those things are alive in today's life. You think of knights in shining armor who bravely entered the Crusades, not only to fight, but also to protect faith and ideals. Though time has passed, those values, loyalty, courage, still exist in people today, in every brave act or perseverance in the face of adversity. You recall Charlemagne, the legendary king who laid the foundation for medieval Europe, who, though long gone, lives on through the architectural, legal, and cultural legacies he left behind. Every stone of the ancient castles, every cathedral arch is a living witness, telling that story to those willing to listen. But then you suddenly realize that the connection between past and present is not only in buildings or legends, but also within the flesh, soul, and stories of each person. There is a story you cannot forget about an elderly woman in the village who lived through countless medieval trials. Though pain and loss are deeply etched on her face, her eyes still shine when she speaks of hope, of festival days by the fire, of fairy tales that gave her strength to overcome all hardships. She tells you the past is not something that has died. It lives in every breath, every step we take. When we remember, tell, and understand, the past becomes strength for the present. And you, upon hearing those words, realize that you are the heir to that flow, the flow of history, culture, and eternal spiritual values. However, that connection is not always easy to recognize, for the past is sometimes veiled by the dust of time, by unsolved mysteries and untold stories. You have wandered through the dark corridors of ancient monasteries, heard strange sounds, felt the presence of past souls silently watching, reminding you of an inescapable responsibility. You have stood amidst moss-covered castle walls, imagining the battles, conspiracies, and sacrifices those stones have witnessed. Each stone, each wall is a part of humanity's memory, an indispensable piece of the grand historical mosaic. But the past is not only what has gone by, it is also precious lessons, a source of inspiration for you and others to continue the path ahead. You recall witnessing the resilience and creativity of medieval people, those who overcame plague, war, and oppression with faith, ingenuity, and undying hope. You also remember stories of the rise of new powers, the Mongol Empire with its surprising strength and transformation, the societal shifts through the Crusades, and the emergence of the merchant class. All these are not separate fragments, but a continuous stream, flowing through, connecting every era and every person. You wonder, can I continue this story? Can I contribute to this flow of history in some way? Can I preserve and pass on to future generations those values and precious lessons? Then you realize that the connection between past and present is a constant reminder of responsibility and opportunity. The responsibility to preserve memory and culture. The opportunity to build a future based on history's lessons. You think of simple yet sacred moments. Villagers gathering by the fire, sharing folk tales, singing traditional songs, building a strong community amid hardship. You remember church ceremonies, where light streams through stained glass windows, casting shimmering patterns on cold stone floors, symbolizing faith that never fades. You also think of the trails, fields, and cities where history has left deep marks and still lives vibrantly in every step taken. A surge of emotion rises within you. Respect, gratitude, and excitement to continue your own journey as both heir and creator, writing the ongoing story of humanity. And in that moment, you know the past is not something distant, but an essential part of who you are today. You, along with others, are the makers, the continuers of the historical stream, contributing to shaping the future. As you step out of the castle or ancient church, dawn begins to break, casting warm rays across the vast sky. You look toward the horizon with faith that no matter the challenges ahead, the light of history, faith, and resilience will forever shine brightly. You smile, ready to embrace all that lies ahead as an inseparable part of the eternal flow, past, present, and future, endlessly surging, connecting, and evolving.